Dear ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to our seminar, Actualité Critique. I'm very happy to welcome you to our first seminar in current semester. I would like to thank especially our guests, Professor Elżbieta Hałas on the Zoom from Faculty of Sociology at the University of Warsaw, Professor Luba Jurgenson from Sorbonne University, Professor Denis Smith from Loughborough University, and Dr. Nicolas Maslowski from Center for French Culture and Francophone Studies at the University of Warsaw. I'm very happy to welcome you to the presentation of the book entitled Politics of Symbolization Across Central and Eastern Europe, which is edited by Professor Elżbieta Hałas and Dr. Nicolas Maslowski. For technical information for our public on the Zoom, please turn off your microphones and cameras, and this webinar is recorded and will be available on the YouTube channel. My name is Kinga Torbicka. I'm the research fellow at the Center of French Culture and Francophone Studies at the University of Warsaw. At the beginning, I will present very shortly our cycle and methods and criteria for evaluation for our students. After, I will present our guests. Then the authors will have a presentation of their book. Afterwards, we invite you to debate with the authors of this book. You can write your questions and comments on the chat. So our cycles, Actualité Critique Européenne, is an open conference and the seminar for students. The seminar has been organized at the University of Warsaw, Science 2019, by the Center for French Culture and Francophone Studies, by the Faculty of Political Science and International Relations, and by the Faculty of Philosophy, and in cooperation with École Normale Supérieure in Paris. The seminar is based on the assumption that in the modern world, there is a need for interdisciplinary debates at the academic level. The aim is to bring a critical and thoughtful look at the events and problems of the contemporary world. The seminar is part of the network of debates taking place in many countries in Europe. It was initiated by the École Normale Supérieure in Paris as part of the Actualité Critique Européenne interdisciplinary seminar. The concept is to connecting together researchers and students around issues of key importance to politics, science, economics, society, and philosophy. This formula aims to become a place of reflection and critical analysis. Seminar coordinators are Professor Justyna Miecznikowska from the Faculty of Political Science and International Relations, Professor Agnieszka Nogal from Faculty of Philosophy, Dr. Nicolas Maslowski, and me from the Center for French Culture and Francophone Studies at the University of Warsaw. Now I will present shortly methods and criteria for class evaluation for our students. The final grade will be issued on the basis of presence. One option is allowed, essays, and activity on the forum during the classes. The deadline for submitting works is the 17th of May 2022. The essay should contain 6 pages. In Polish, the structure of scientific work should be related to the topics of the webinar and must be sent by email to one of the coordinators of this cycle. Now, let me present our guests. Professor Elżbieta Hałas, you are a full professor of sociology at the University of Warsaw. Your research interests are interpretative social theory and cultural and relational sociology. Thank you for your presence here. Professor Luba Jurgenson, you are a writer, translator, and full professor at the Department of Slavic Studies at the Sorbonne University, and you are director of the Center of Interdisciplinary Research on Central, Eastern, and Balkan Europe. Professor Denis Smith, you are Emeritus Professor of Sociology at the Loughborough University, and Nicolas Maslowski, you are a director of the Center for French Culture and Francophone Studies at the University of Warsaw, specializing in collective memory, and historical sociology. Thank you all for accepting our invitation. Today, classes will be devoted to the presentation of the book, Politics of Symbolization Across Central and Eastern Europe. This politics affects the semantic of identities and power relations between various subjects and encompasses the changing meaning of social spaces, times, historical narrative, as well as modality of collective memory. This book is the part of the series Study in Sociology, Symbol Theory and Society, edited by Elżbieta Hałas and Paolo Terenzi. Now I invite the authors of this book to present this monography. Professor Hałas will present this volume, The Genesis, Concept, Problem, and Structure. Oh, Professor Hałas, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Torbicka, for this very kind introduction. At the beginning, allow me to comment briefly on the circumstances of the origin of this book and of today's discussion about it. 2 years ago, we had to cancel the conference on politics of symbolization across Central and Eastern Europe because of the COVID-19 pandemic. A year later, the book has been published due to the common efforts of authors to have this volume published, who had no chance to meet in person in Warsaw. And now, today's meeting. The Russian invasion leading to war in Ukraine has changed the historical context in which the book can be read. The text, I mean, the changing the context that changes, I think, also the reading of the text of the book to a certain degree. But at the same time, this tragic context confirms the importance of its topic. So I will make some general remarks regarding idea of the book on European space, semiosis, and politics of symbolization. Problems of meaning making are pivotal for shaping the social world. To be communicated, meanings need objectifying forms of expression. Signs and symbols serve this purpose. Communication, as shown already by the founders of modern semiotic, is not a simple process determined by a code. It consists of communicative acts and is the achievement, in fact. It's therefore the active achievement. The social world is constantly rife with processes of semiosis, creating, expressing, and symbolically objectifying meanings. After discovering the symbolic constitution of society, the next step in social theory was to study the problems of symbolic power and the politics of symbolization. Symbolic power does not lie in symbolism itself, but in social relations of power and the use of symbolism. Symbolism represents an integral dimension of social relations. It is not the symbols themselves, as I have said, but acts of symbolization and pragmatic use of symbolism that are of importance. Social crises, wars, revolutions, and other social transformations expose the symbolic construction of the social order. Of key importance is the issue of social identities and their semantics, usually based on a binary code. For example, the fellow citizens and enemies. competition and struggle for the meaning of social reality are part of processes of semiosis. One of the key issues is the control of historicity through the strategic use of symbolism in the politics of remembering and forgetting. Politics of symbolization do not focus only on the past, as various temporal orientations are possible. However, an orientation towards the past makes it possible to give meaning to the present and the future. Semiosis means creating meanings as well as using signs as symbols, as already said. Semiosis is a continuous process, a flow, a chain of formation of meaning structures. The aim of this book, discussed here, is to promote reflection on the politics of symbolization in Central and Eastern Europe. Politics of symbolization entail intentional meaning-making and the strategic use of symbolism. This perspective, described by me, shows the space of Central and Eastern Europe as a space of semiosis. The space of Central and Eastern Europe is not uniform, of course. The singling out of different Europes lies at the sphere of semiosis. It is a symbolic construct whose meaning is subject to various interpretations and struggles. As a project, the European Union has enlivened discussions regarding the concept of European unity. The border changes and divisions within Europe, both geographical and historical, took particularly dramatic turn after World War II. The division, lasting almost half a century, meant that even after its abolition, the historical effects of this division are still being reproduced in the European space. The space of the former Soviet bloc sees constant symbolic conflicts related to demands for settling accounts with the communist past. Politics of symbolization include various strategies of referring to the past in view of images of the future. The prospective and retrospective at the same time orientation of politics of the symbolization from the present point of view makes control of the collective memory important in the process of making history. The European migration crisis, 2015-2016, and the COVID-19 pandemic has seemed to mark a new era with its global challenges. The war in Ukraine is the definitive turning point that the making of history as the process of semiosis is underway in effect. The book represents an attempt to search for patterns as regards politics of symbolization, different ways of using symbolism that can ignite conflicts as well as resolve them. The European Union's politics of symbolization occasionally is at odds with symbolic politics of nation states. The book aims to contribute to a better understanding of the symbolic constitution of the social world, which is relational in essence. The book's 12 chapters are divided to 4 interrelated topics in the first part, spaces of semiosis and politics of symbolization, three issues, these issues, I'm sorry, are discussed by three authors, Hubert Knobloch, Peter Zelt, and Paul Blocher. The second part of the book, Time and Semiosis of History, Symbolic Conflicts over Remembering and Forgetting, also consists of 3 chapters by Luba, Jurgenson, Joanna Nowicki, and by myself. The third section, Symbolic Construction of Communities, New Beginnings and New Divides, focuses on issues of civic culture discussed by Ulf Hedetoft, Nicolas Maslowski, as well as Anna Pless and Dick Houtman. The chapters contained in the fourth section of the book, Symbolic Politics of European Unification, discuss the expectations of post-communist countries regarding the recognition of their specificity. These problems are discussed by Laura Neumeier, Valentin Berg, and Rok Zupancic with his co-workers Faris Kochan and Iris Ivanish. The book's leitmotif is the conviction that politics of symbolization deserves the in-depth attention. This is especially true as regards the developments of these politics in Central and Eastern Europe, where the dominating and liberating powers of symbols have clashed in the past and continue to do so. I would like at that moment to thank again all co-authors for their excellent cooperation and original chapters based on their expertise. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Elżbieta Hałas. And now I invite Dr. Nicolas Maslowski, which will present your opinion and your chapter of the book.
Yes, thank you very much for organizing this meeting, Kinga. And I would like to join Elżbieta Hałas for sending a big thank to all the co-authors. We were very disappointed to cancel this conference, this meeting during this pandemic crisis. And now I'm disappointed by all the actualities in Ukraine. And I have a feeling that speaking about my chapter that is only a marginal element of all this book would be some kind of strange facing the situation we have. I will try just to present a few maybe reflections related with this book. The first one is that it is a book about so the title, Politics of Symbolization Across Central and Eastern Europe. Why should we be interested particularly in Central and Eastern Europe? What do those countries have in common? First of all, they have in common that they are participating to this European space of semiosis, but they are not the center of this meaning production, or they are rarely this center. They are in a situation often of semi-periphery, sometimes of periphery, that may have some common influences on these countries. But at the same time, these different societies, countries, groups within this region build their own strategies. we can think about how to use these symbols. I'm personally inspired by what is called the French pragmatic sociology, but we can use other approach. Nevertheless, we can see that in those different countries, in those different societies, even when we have similar symbols, they can be used on different ways. I come back to this point very quickly. Those countries are not constituting a coherent whole. The second point is this is a diversified region where we can find some common elements. The first element I was speaking about is the relation to the center, that is an unequal relation to this center. The second one is this, for example, specific experience of the Second World War. We can speak about blood of earth, earth of blood. We can speak as well about this bloodlands. We can speak about this experience of the Soviet-type communist regimes, or very unequal relations or experience of the dissent movements. But nowadays, in the use of symbols, you have very diversified projects. We can divide on the national level into 2 or 3 types at least, but actually if we go more into details in the societies, there are much more diversities. And here I believe we have to see the symbols as tools, as a box of tools that can be used depending on the purpose we want to achieve, and it's very often that with a clear strategy and use of symbols, you obtain another result than the results that we were planning to obtain. So the word is a little bit complicated, but we are like in a situation where you have different players playing cards, even when they have the same cards, they can play different games. Yes, this is a little bit my metaphor, the metaphor I would like to use. Last week, we were all hearing this discourse of President Putin that was concerning, we can speak about politics of memory or of history, but actually it was much larger. It was different kind of civilizations and politics of symbolization, because it was concerning a strategic vision, perspective for the future, the vision of the nowadays situation. And in that sense, we can, for those interested in sociology, make a relation with the symbolic interactionism, the use of the Goffmanian use of frames. But even if you can differently use symbols, it doesn't mean that you can make them say whatever. If you distort too much some uses, some symbols, you are not credible. And these are the feelings as well I had since the last days, I think we all had. But we can see this situation regularly. We had that in the past, in some interpretation of the mass crimes, in so many questions. So the variety of use of the symbol doesn't mean that you can really, on an efficient way, make them say whatever. Do I have still a few minutes? So why do we use symbolic politics, politics of symbols? So there are so many reasons that I cannot quote them all, but here in the book we're underlining the question of the community building. This community building is often in politics, you create community to divide in order to rule, or sometimes on the opposite, if you are looking for some power, you try to have a national mobilization in order to rule as well. Yes, so these are two examples, very opposite. But you can have as well, and I was beginning with that, politics of symbol, of a semi-periphery to the core, to the center. So you can have a special relation of Central and Eastern Europe toward, let's say, Brussels, if we want to symbolize the west of the EU, to try to change their narrative, their vision of the past, of the present. And we had the discussion about the place of or the interpretation of the communist past and the strategies of different countries from Central Europe to bring this kind of interpretation in Brussels. Another relation is a relation of distanciation from the center, when anti-liberalism can be seen as a way to present politics as in a kind of anti-colonial discourse, as a preservation from domination of the center. And finally, the EU values can be a source of frustrations when you see the reality of everyday life in the region compared to the values of equality, of justice, and citizenship developed and spread by through Europe nowadays. I would like to finish saying that I'm very happy today that we have both as well Luba Jurgenson that could touch in a very major point, or many major points, but I think maybe you will concentrate on the question of primes. I don't know. We will see. I was as well under the inspiration of this major for me book concerning the civilized rebels. Maybe Dennis will tell us a few words, even though I believe that in this common European semiosis or sphere, this common space of semiosis, we are a little bit in a different situation than in post-colonial India or post-apartheid South Africa. We are sharing many meanings by advance. This community, even though some discourse rejecting the kind of colonialism are sometimes developed, the cultural background is very here similar, but here I would like to let Dennis speak about that. So thanks again, Kinga and the whole staff of the organizers for this meeting, and I give the floor.
Thank you very much, Nicolas Maslowski. Now, Professor Luba Jurgenson, could you please present us your chapter and your opinion of the book?
Thank you very much for the invitation, and thanks to all the organizers for this meeting. I'm very happy to stay in Warsaw today, because I have not been in Warsaw for 2 years because of COVID, of course. And I'm sorry, but I will probably repeat some things already said by Elżbieta and Nicolas. First, to follow up what Nicolas said, in fact, Central and Eastern Europe for me has the peculiarity of having been during the 20th century the scene of particularly murderous violence perpetrated by actors from all sides, and especially by the two main totalitarian regimes in Europe, Nazism and communism. And we can see the posterity of this history today. So it is very difficult for me, like for Nicolas, to think today about theoretical issues and to speak about my chapter. But of course, the book we speak about had not only theoretical impact. The current events show how politics of symbolization are important not only for scientific community, but also for our world, and how important it is to study them. In my chapter of the book, I wrote about the symbol of the tree and its use by different initiatives of memorization in Central and Eastern Europe. By today, our Central and Eastern Europe has changed. And I would like to say something, maybe something else, something other, notably about the war of memories, which paved the way of the real war and the instrumentalization of memory conflicts by the Russian president. In fact, the present events show us how the symbolic shapes our reality. I think all of you listened to the unbelievable discourse of Putin about Ukraine, from which resulted that it is not a country and the Ukrainians are not a nation. This speech would not deserve our attention because it is frankly indifferent in relation to what is happening. Now, to know if Ukraine was created by Lenin and in what form it existed before. But this discourse shows the will of Putin to affirm the definitive control of the state on history and memory. This will, this desire is also expressed by the dissolution of the NGO Memorial International, confirmed yesterday by the Russian Supreme Court. Memorial was accused of having violated the law of foreign agents too often, but the real reason was that Memorial presented the Soviet Union as a criminal state and disseminated a wrong vision of Soviet history. This reason was presented by the court. It is therefore quite logical that the NGO is hit at a time when the correct view of history is used as a symbolic weapon against Ukraine. The war is presented as being waged against a faulty historical memory by the holders of a correct historical memory. And this correct memory was already protected by laws, and now it is also protected by weapons. This justification of the invasion reminds us of Molotov's speech after the signing of the German-Soviet Pact, in which he declared that Poland did not exist as a state. The fourth partition of Poland in 1939 indeed put an end to its existence at that time. But this non-existence was presented as a justification for the partition. The same rhetoric can be observed today. Ukraine does not exist. Its invasion is only a recognition of this fact. This delirious lesson in history and memory given by the Russian head of state on the eve of the attack takes us back to the Second World War, showing once again that from now on, in order to legitimize current political decisions, he's invoking the Soviet symbolic heritage. Thus, the attack took place on February 23, 24, but in the night, on the night, February 23 is the day of the Soviet army, or now of the defender of the fatherland. The demand to denazify Ukraine comes from the same discursive arsenal of the Second World War. Russian television presents Ukrainian as Nazis, fascists, and Banderovцы, supporters of Bandera in the same terms as immediately after the war. The omnipresence of the great patriotic war in the public space, museums, media, commemorations, publications, cinema, internet, education, reconstructions, and so on, has in a way prepared the ground for this anachronistic justification of violence. For several years now, Russian citizens have been subjected to the great national narrative that has been repeated in a loop on all available media. It is this second-hand time, to use an expression of Svetlana Alexievich, the postmodern time of the remake, which dominates today in the sphere of the imagination. The video game logics that seem to preside over the creation of this reversible time, the Russian people fighting against fascists and Banderovians, are thus based on a solid preparation in terms of propaganda and reinforced state control over shared symbolic content. The prohibition of the word war in Russia in connection with what is happening, officially a military operation, the denial of strikes against civilians, attacks against civilians, the destruction or abandonment of the bodies of fallen Russian soldiers in Ukraine clearly shows the will to control the symbolic impact of violence and so of the symbolic real. It is not only a question of constructing the event for the Russian population as a defense in order to inscribe it in the national narrative where Russia cannot appear as an aggressor, but only as an aggressed, heroic and victorious one. It is also a question of producing a real in a context where the real seems evasive or lacking or fantastic. The control of the symbolic has at stake the control of the real. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Luba Jurgenson. And now, Professor Dennis Smith, you were a reviewer of this volume. Please present your opinion and share with us your opinion of this book.
I think the book is absolutely marvelous, and I learnt a great deal from it, not having been brought up in that part of the country, although having been to Russia, having been to some of those countries in the past. I respond very positively to what the last speaker has said. As an accurate description of the way of feeling and thinking of people I've met who have been brought up within, I'm not saying this applies to my colleague there, but the point being that my father-in-law was a coal miner. He was also a communist, and just for contrast, my mother was the daughter of a policeman who served in Ireland during the Troubles. And although I'm neither a Catholic nor a communist, as it happens. Now, but I can appreciate the virtues of both, and etc. What I would like to say at this point is that the situation we are living through now, it seems to me, is not clearly the responsibility of anyone in Europe. It's a part of a. It's driven by what one might call the actually worldwide and continental-wide energy of collapse. After a century and a half of the West and Europe giving its orders to the rest of the world, and that situation is ending. It's like a tea tray that's actually moving into a different orientation, not necessarily with the rise of the East, but with the balancing up of the East. So I think that this process of collapse began to become obvious in the early part of the 20th century, after World War I, when St. Petersburg, Berlin, Vienna, Constantinople lost their empires and their old ruling classes, and the second phase got underway at the end of the Cold War with the disintegration of the USSR and Yugoslavia. And this has spoiled the prospects and expectations and the self-image of people in all levels of the social world, and has been to some extent alleviated by the. Sorry, I'm going on a bit. I'll try and cut this down. But the enormous financial and military power of the United States. And I think Mr. Putin is one example of how leaders who are losing their authority respond to and resist the effects of collapse. And they try and build up new political structures that can be forcibly reclaim the territory. And so we tend to get centralized leadership of a forceful kind, more perhaps than we're used to. What else can I say for the moment? The British Empire, which coming from a family where my father was a staunch socialist from South Wales, and my mother a devout Catholic until she met my father. I've seen some of these dynamics and have been able to work out that the collapse of the British Empire has happened in counterpoint with some of these other processes. I mean, the British Empire, whether it deserved to or not, survived the First World War, and only began to undergo what other empires had already undergone after 1945. That's just part of the scene I see at the moment. I'll just stop. I'm not saying that I've come to a marvelous and wonderful conclusion, but I'll just stop there.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Danny Smith, and thank you all authors for presenting us this very interesting volume, which is very more than actual today in this dramatic situation. So we invite you to the session of question and comments. You could write your question and comments on the chat. And so, if there are any questions on the room, so maybe I will start. As we presented in this book, politics of symbolization do not have to focus primarily on the meaning of the past. It makes it possible to give meaning to both the present and the future, like we see today with the invasion of Ukraine. What do you think? Which signs and symbols will express meanings of this politics of symbolization in this conflict today? Maybe Professor Hałas or Professor Jurgenson?
Thank you for addressing this question to me. You are right. Politics of symbolization is not the politics oriented towards the past, although of course after the collapse of the communism or state socialism, there have been this fascination with what has been called the return of memory, and not that much on the deeper analysis of the temporality and what I call the making of history after Turenne and other authors. I'm very much influenced by Boris Uspieński and his semiotics of history that shows that the historical development or the history itself does not run on the line forward, but it is a very complicated move of paths from the present to the past to find the resources, then to get the actual actions be directed towards the future. But what I have tried to show also in my studies is that in fact this continual interaction of prospective and retrospective moves. So this is the politics then of symbolization. I would like to make more remarks on that concept and on that problem. Is not the same as cannot be reduced to the politics of symbols as described, for instance, by Cholowicz in his works on Balkans and the use of symbolism, the primordial symbolism of blood and earth and so on, and other symbols in that constellation, the politics of symbols. And politics of symbolization is also not equal to symbolic politics, as studied in the classic work by Edelman, where we of course have this symbolic politics that is performed, and the media are also the scene for that politics, just to influence the audience, the public. I think the politics of symbolization embraces all these aspects, and I think that you have asked me directly to comment on the current situation, which is of course difficult. So we have moved far beyond what is contained in the book, as I have told it, book shaped in another context. We have not been taking into consideration Russia, although its shadow is Soviet Union, the shadow is also present in the chapters and issues discussed. And I believe that only in the chapter by Luba Jurgenson we have problems of memory and symbolization being integrated to the book. But this is only the comment on that currently we go beyond what we have done, touching problems, but I think in a way also attaining some holistic view. But what I would like to say, answering your question, I think what is more, of course, the symbols, that sort of repertoires, to use Charles Tilly's expression, are of course important, and they must be in use. But what is going on is the process of I mean the process in which meaningful actions, strategic actions, and in situation of war, they make the time so dense and make the history. I mean, they as significant events, and new symbols arises. Of course, we may say there's something universal. In a sense, when you look at history as a drama, as at the same time, res geste, that's going on is full of meaning and significance. People experience all that. And there is at the same time this historia rerum gestarum, this narrative interpretation of what is going on. What I'm thinking about the new symbolism of heroism, and just to be more direct in answering a question of the use of symbols, I think the cocktail of Molotov cocktail is a good example. I may say I haven't known the origin of that expression before, but I've got curious, and just it is easy to find out on the web of that narrative of Molotov of bread baskets. I mean, in fact, bombs, but he was talking that bread baskets are, under Finland. So the answer was with Molotov cocktails, although there are other narratives regarding the origin of this. So this is part of these tragic stories. And to be more optimistic, then I would like to come back to the book. We have it's plenty of analysis of trauma and I mean the special perspective of this book is a semiotic one. So it goes beyond many analysis of problems, issues of memory in terms of politics of symbolization. But we discuss also, the authors discussed also symbolism of European integration, and the opening chapter is on the second one of the chapters. The third chapter is on constitutionalism. So this is also the symbolism in use, and the symbolism of constitutionalism being at the background of democracy, and the very idea of democracy is a symbol, in use. So of course, to present all that in a more refined way, it would take time. So I will finish at that moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Hałas. Would you like to comment or?
Maybe I can add something about memory. But of course, the book is not about the past, but memory is not a concept on the past. Memory is a present content. It is the present of the past, and so it is maybe the future of the past and of the present. And I see here maybe two issues. The first one is the question of the symbols used by both camps to construct the event that we are living, because and this is the second issue. We need symbolization in order to be in the world. We cannot perceive. We don't perceive things immediately. We need symbolization, symbols in order to approach the reality. And this reality is so violent that maybe we don't have yet tools to approach it. And I hope that historians and other researchers of the future will study the symbols who accompany this event. But if we speak about, so I cannot, I have not a clear vision of this symbolic arsenal we had with this word. But if we speak about Russian symbolics, we can see that maybe the major symbolic content is from the Soviet symbolics, and this is clearly a conscient politics, because the struggle against Ukraine is means that clearly we observe a will to reconstruct the empire, to reconstruct the Soviet Union, and so the existence of this country means that we are not all together now, and we were all together in the Second World War. So it is the symbols. This discourse provides a lot of symbols of the past, but these symbols are completely anachronical today, and so it is a sort of postmodern relation to the past and to the present. But this fiction is bloody, and it allows us to a bloody reality.
Thank you very much, Nicolas or Denis. You would like to add something?
Are you inviting me to say? Are you saying, Madam colleague, that since the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia has not been able to, its rulers have not been able to construct for themselves an imaginary, a set of ideas, not necessarily intellectually precise, but emotive, evocative, and a chap like Vladimir Putin finds it's necessary to go back to the old symbols because he cannot advance to any others. Is that what you're saying?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I think so. Immediately after the collapse of the Soviet Union, there was another imagination, democratic imagination, because when we see images of meetings on the Lubyanka place, it seems it seems really popular movement. It was manipulated, of course, but there was a popular movement, and this popular movement was expressed also through the concern of memory, because people wanted to know the past of the true past of its country, and it is and for this reason the two topics are completely linked. The topic of politics, of symbolization, and the topic of memory, because memory was really was a motor of this democratization, and the
association memorial.
Yes, that the association memorial born in these years, in the end of the 80s, and provided to people, provided a memory at the level of people, not only the memory of the state, but the memory of the main objective of Memorial International was to find the destinies, to enlighten the destinies of every victim, and this approach was very important for people. So the fact of coming back to Soviet values, that cannot be Soviet values because the time had changed. So the fact to put forward in the center of the attention of the discourse is this former imagination is in fact is renouncing to construct something new.
Thank you. Dennis, you would like to add something?
Always. I remember about 20 years ago going to Moscow, and this was at a time after, obviously after '89, and I was had a few visits to the Institute of Oriental Studies, now which someone from St. Petersburg, as it became known, I heard her dismissing it as a nest of spies, but that is, of course, her quote, not mine. And but there, I found over about 10 years a shift, because I went a couple of times, a shift in the atmosphere. That when I went there first, there was initially a very jolly, I'm not being demeaning, a very nice professor who I also happened to meet at a conference in Shanghai, and I saw he got on very well with the Chinese. They were very friendly, but niceness, certainly overtly, was the tone. But then about 10 years later, the man in charge of that particular institute, which I forget what it was called, he was much more of a tough guy. You could imagine that he could run a building site, and he would hire and fire and make it work the way he wanted to, and it was a less pleasant atmosphere. So something happened in the early part of this century, and I don't know exactly what that was. I'm just reporting now.
Thank you very much. Nicolas, would like to add something?
Yeah, I was thinking about this topic is so large. I don't want to go too far, but there are three kinds of things that are coming to my mind. First thing, when you, Dennis, you were speaking about your father and your mother, were communists and Catholic. I was always divided between this question of materialism and postmodernism. When people are dying of hunger or dying from the war, it's not a question of interpretation, it's very material. But on the other side, and we have the feeling when there is a tank that there is not a lot of things to do. And during the Second World War, or now when we see tanks, we have the feeling that words are not so important. But there are other situations where we see that a symbol or a metaphor can win, when it can change a situation. Yes, and typically we have this reflection of Václav Havel. This is the first element. Second element is between this question of material and the, I don't know, symbolic superstructure we call Marx or cultural. There is a question of politics and the state. And I have the feeling that in all Central and Eastern Europe, except in maybe Yugoslavia, there was a moment of belief in a new project, in a new modernization. And for various reasons, for different reasons in those different countries, I have the feeling that those regions share doubt about the sense of having any project of modernization. There is just sometimes a project to create a kind of come back to the status quo ante, or and here Ukraine is like a kind of refreshing, because you have still this belief in this project related with Europe, this energy that remind us like good times. But is it possible nowadays to have another social imagination, another project than the one related with Europe in this part of the world? And I don't really know how to answer to my own question.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. Do you have any questions or comments, maybe on the Zoom also? No?
Who are you asking?
Okay, may I?
Yes. Yes, Jakub Motrenko, please.
Okay, so thank you for your speeches. Thank you for the book. Haven't read yet, but I'm going to. I'd like to follow up what you were talking about, because when we talk about Putin's Russia, we could tend to use the old good terms like propaganda or ideology in this the simplest meaning. And I'm wondering what is the value to use the concept, the theories of politics of history, politics of memory, moral capital, or right politics of symbolization. So what, as well, I understand that the propaganda or ideology has clear evaluative background, and I'm wondering what is a new value of more general social theories like politics of symbolization. So perhaps you can say something about how to make successful or unsuccessful meaning making, let's say. So this is my general question to all of guests. And one little comment about Putin's philosophy, let's say, because we tend to say this is anachronical, as Professor Jurgenson said, but at the same time he used philosophy of Soloviev, Berdayev, Ilyin, what Andrzej Walicki had shown a few years ago. So in a sense, I would say it was innovative. It's not only coming back to the old symbols, anachronical symbols. It is innovative, and in this sense, Russian people, they followed and they follow all the time Putin. Thank you.
Thank you, Jakub, for your question and for your comment. Maybe we will start with Professor Jurgenson.
I don't want to monopolize the floor, and really I don't know how to answer. So such a big question. I can just I don't know what new values we can find to reconstruct our collapsing world now in this moment, but about the innovative position, philosophical position of Putin. Really,
Please, just don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say he's a philosophical genius.
You spoke about some references to Russian philosophers, but it is not very new because it is a very common discourse about these religious philosophers. If I understand well your question, but of course I did not say that Putin is that his politics is only anachronical. I spoke about some symbols he uses. Of course, he is. But the symbols I spoke about seem to me, it's not only to me, are symbols already used in the past. In this sense, they are anachronical, but of course they cannot to be used exactly in the same manner. So we have a sort of remake of it is a fake Soviet Union. It's similar. And it is interesting to see that maybe this topic must be studied in the future. For example, we see that we see a lot of images about the war now, and some of these images are false and come from games, from games and movies, and it is a very interesting phenomenon that we see some images of the reality and images from movies or games, and they are and we must to interpret we need some tools to distinguish between these images, because we when we see them we cannot maybe immediately understand if it is if they are true or not.
You mean real or not, or true or not? Sorry.
Real or not?
Yeah. I mean, that's a very. I mean, I'm diving in, not knowing what I'm going to say really, but I have noticed what I think you're pointing towards, that there's a kind of metaverse, to use the recent word, being promoted by various technological entertainment companies, saying, look, actually, you don't need to live. You just sit down and watch the telly, and life is there for you. And you just have to be able to passively press the button that sends money to us. The idea of, I mean, I could invent a scenario. I mean, I'm sure it's been done by several clever people, showing the existence of hyper worlds or unreal worlds, and eventually one would see the disappearance of actual human beings. They won't be necessary to make. But what is being maintained? Is it a capitalist order, or is it simply forms of activity which maintain the lifestyle of a small establishment. This actually has been discussed on the telly and radio over the last couple of days, I noticed. So the whole question of what actually we're trying to do here, and when I say we, members of the demos, you know, a democratic population, that has not recently had a restatement. Presumably over the past century and a half, the main task has been to advance the capacity of particular territories to produce livable existences for their populations. Now, the problem with that was that the exploited people were not just, forms of life were not just animals, but human beings. So I think all of these issues are being discussed in science fiction and elsewhere. And if someone wants to make a career for themselves, they might go and sort that out and explain it to the rest of us. I'm sorry, that's a very cheap ending.
Well, thank you very much. Maybe Professor Hałas would like to add something. Unfortunately, we do not time, so
very shortly, I would like to answer the question by Jakub Motrenko, the theoretical question about value-added notion of politics of symbolization, and why politics of symbolization and not other well-known concepts like propaganda or ideology. So first, symbolism is not limited to discursive symbolism. So that's why symbolization, not ideology or propaganda. And then politics of symbolization that is not limited to the notion of politics where the agency is on the part of the state. So I think that we must define better, but not the time, the notion of politics, which is to use the concept of Charles Tilly, maybe the polite politics, which is institutionalized and has its also symbolism, and the politics that is subversive, and politics of civilization is also on the part of subversion of movements of resistance, etc. So ideology is maybe part of politics, but in our times, I think that there are more techniques of influencing people than monocentric and monolithic propaganda, even in the states that are autocratic. Yes, I would not answer the questions related to Russia. I've never been to Russia, although I am acquainted. I read about Russia, and I think that on internet there is available the dissertation written by my former doctoral student Alexandra Zamarayeva on politics of nostalgia in Russia, made by Putin, and about his symbolism of Soviet origin of the time of the Soviet time, the symbolism of Победа, victory, and this great symbol of the collapse of this historical. We now listen it on TV. And with this idiom of this huge, of the biggest catastrophe in the whole history the collapse of the Soviet Union. And I think that one of that's a Denis commentary or the commentaries on the creative aspects, and of Jakub's commentary that this is the creation, not just reproduction of old schemes. This is right. So this is shortly and maybe very superficial. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Elżbieta Hałas, and I think we will stop here. Thank you very much, all the authors. We invite you, of course, to consult this book, which is available on the Peter Long site. You could find also old series edited by Professor Elżbieta Hałas and Paolo Perenzi, Study in Sociology, Symbols, Theory and Society. And the last volume of this series, entitled Contested Legacies 1989, Geopolitics, Memories and Societies in Central and Eastern Europe, was edited and is edited by Nicolas Maslowski and me, and will be available very soon. So thank you very much, all our authors, and we invite you to our next seminar of Actuality and Critique, 15th of March. We will discuss the topic about Autriche, contemporary European and security politics with Professor Dariusz Kukławski. So thank you very much, all participants, and see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I've been very happy to meet Professor Jurgenson, although on the distance, and to meet with Denis Smith.
Thank you for inviting me from the British periphery.